Cyrus here with another video, and today we're covering whether or not you have the right personality for coding. This is my own opinion from my own experiences of trying to learn to code on several occasions, specifically JavaScript and React, and always gaining momentum and then losing momentum again in a cycle over and over and over. So that's what this video is going to be about, and let's get into it in more detail. Okay, let's explain my coding journey so far and what's happened. So I've tried to cover all the tutorials that are available, videos by guys like Sonmez, Traversy. I've done a bunch of Udemy courses. I must have a library of about 10 to 15 courses covering JavaScript, React, Node, all of that good stuff. You know, I'm just one of those people who likes to accumulate knowledge in a library, and then I just feel it's there, you know, even though it's not in my brain, it's there, and at one point it will end up in my brain. So that's just a little bit about what I've done so far in terms of learning coding. So what's the motivation for learning to code? Well, that's the interesting thing. The motivation is, in fact, for me anyway, right there. I mean, look at these contract rates. We're talking about a minimum of £500 a day if you're a contractor for a programming language, going all the way up to ML, just getting almost towards £800 a day. Now think about that. If you were a full-time employee in the UK, say, what kind of salary that equates to. So a big part of it is the motivation. I mean, it's lucrative, but the key is that would not be so appealing if it wasn't combined with the fact that everyone knows this very well, that the biggest opening in remote jobs is in programming languages and coding, because it's just so well suited for being anywhere in the world. So if you're getting these day rates, and you're getting to choose where you want to be, then this is just paradise. And I think this fixation on the money is probably one of the main reasons why someone might not be suited to coding, because it is extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation. My mindset is very outcome oriented. I want to learn coding as a means to an end. I wanted to learn it because I want to be able to build a commercially lucrative product. But I think a lot of coders who really excel at it are people who would just do it in their spare time because they love the process of coding. They love the cognitive experience of code. It's like their game of choice, their logic puzzle of choice. It's what keeps them going. So that's my main first point. Number two is best expressed by everyone's favourite, Mr. Jordan Peterson, in a video called What Kind of Job Fits You, which I'll link in the description below. In it, and I quote, "If you go into a job and you're not good at the job, it's going to be bloody difficult for you to do well." So thanks for that, Mr. Peterson, for the little cameo. Now, by smart enough for the job, I don't mean raw IQ. What I mean is your brain suited to that linear A to B to C to D to E thinking? That very structured form of analytical, precise thinking, because the syntax has to be 100% exact for it to work. It's not like nature in the real world where things are messy but they still work somehow. So it's about having that right type of smartness in terms of the way your brain naturally works. So that leads to point number three. Do you enjoy tasks that require you to be 100% correct? Does that give you satisfaction rather than frustration? For me, it certainly gives me frustration because I just think to myself, well, it's mostly correct, so that's good enough. Like, I just want it to work. So that's another difference. Point number four, I sometimes think to myself, if I spend that amount of time every day coding that you would in a full-time job, will it subtly rewire my brain because I'm spending so much time in that type of cognitive task? And then one day will I wake up and I'll no longer be myself because I've developed that part of my brain so much. So I think a sense of losing your core identity might also be another reason why coding might not be a good fit. Numero 5, and this one is more about why it's easy to lose momentum or focus on the learning path of coding. And what I would say is, whilst there are so many great tutorials out there that go into detail, Udemy, they really break everything down. I feel like they're always taught from the perspective of a seasoned expert who knows this inside out and really thinks about the code from the point of the theory of the code itself. Whereas what I would like to see is a more commercially oriented coding bootcamp product, something that just takes some very lucrative app or API or web service, whether it be Stripe, whatever else comes to mind, Uber, Bolt, all of these companies, and then reverse engineers it to teach me the code snippets and concepts that are the most commercially lucrative. That would be great. My next thought is that I generally prefer domains of knowledge that are somewhat stable with a small component of evolution over time. I think the rate of growth in complexity of technical knowledge required now for those really good new professions is huge. You really need to be able to handle complex concepts for most of these jobs now. So any time spent acquiring that knowledge, I'd like it to be relevant and well reimbursed for quite a few years ahead. But with the churn in coding languages all of the time, new concepts coming up, new paradigms, new front ends, back ends being favored by different companies, it feels like you really have to be committed and in love with learning and keeping up with the coding process. The next point would be, if you happen to have a good friend in your life or a mentor who is an experienced developer, like I happen to have a few myself who have given me many hours of their time in terms of looking over some code or giving me feedback on things that I need help with. How well do you think your motivation aligns with their motivation and their personality when they're explaining the concepts with you? Now, I'm not saying that everyone has to be exactly the same type of person to learn to code, but it's interesting if you come back to the mentor saying, "Oh, this is frustrating," but they actually say, "Actually, that's actually quite interesting." It's a different perspective on the same topic. Now, going back to Dr. Jordan Peterson for my next point, I quote him again from his video: "Most people have at least one area of significant weakness in their intelligence personality makeup, and you don't want to be in a position where that is a fatal flaw for the job you are doing." So I think it's kind of clear what Dr. Peterson's getting at. He's saying, assess all of your personality intelligence factors, and if there's one, whether it be the big 5 traits, things to do with conscientiousness, disagreeableness, agreeableness, all of these traits, and if there's one of those which is your big deficit, but it's the big requirement in that role, then what's the bloody point? So, for example, I'll link this to my next point. Say that you have ADHD, self-diagnosed, or you get bored easily. Essentially, you like to learn things. You constantly want to learn new things, new stimulus. But when it comes to sustaining that over time or having to implement the same thing again and again and again, your brain just switches off. Then coding is going to probably be quite difficult because there's a lot of attention to detail. There's structuring the code. There's repetitive parts of building components and those kind of items. And like a person called Jessica McCabe from a really great channel called How to ADHD, which I will link below, which I've watched all of her videos. They're really amazing. This I don't see these two things gelling particularly well together. But if you've got ADHD, you've been self-diagnosed with it and are a successful programmer, then I'd love to hear from you below in the comments. So overall, that's my reflections on whether or not someone might have the right personality for coding. And if you agree or disagree, you're a coder yourself and actually you have lots of the traits that I said maybe would make things difficult, then I'd love to hear below. I'm always looking for a different perspective, whether it confirms or disagrees. And this is an area I've always been interested in terms of our personalities and therefore our career paths, how to align them. And I think these are ideas that aren't given enough time in schools or in our adult world when it comes to career changes or options. So I think it's really important to talk about. The one final thing I will mention is that I read a really interesting book a few months ago, which I will just tab to so I can read the title. It's called Coders, Who They Are, What They Think and How They Are Changing Our World, which I'll link below, by Clive Thompson. And that's kind of an anthropological, sociological book that looks at coders and actually analyzes them as a type, a personality type. So I don't know how many of my ideas today, I've just done these off the top of my head, how much they cross over with what he's written because I can't remember. But I think that's well worth a read because it really shows that actually there might be a neurological and personality basis for why some people are really excelling in this new technological world. Okay, I've been Ryo Cyrus. I'll put out more videos to do with gadgets, tech, unusual uses for gadgets and tech, and also talking about careers, futurism, and all of my opinions around this. If you like this content and you want to see more of the videos coming forward, please do the usual, as everyone says, that little rhyme about subscribing, like, notifications, and please leave a comment below. I look forward to meeting you in another video soon.